Close your eyes for a second. Think of the moment that broke you. The moment you sat on the floor, maybe in a hospital, maybe in a bathroom, maybe in your car where nobody could see you. And you said to the universe, "Why me?" Think of that moment, hold it, because I want to tell you something today that took me years to understand. That moment, that exact, painful, unbearable moment was not a punishment. It was a preparation. I know what it feels like to lose everything at once. I know what it feels like when the life you planned is taken from you in a single second, without warning, without mercy. I know what it feels like to look at your own hands and wonder if they will ever create something again. I know what it feels like to cry so long that tears stop coming, and what remains is just silence. Heavy, hollow silence. And I know what it feels like to be told by well-meaning people, by people who love you. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And you want to scream, because in that moment, no reason feels good enough. No explanation feels big enough to justify what you are carrying. But here is what I have learned. Pain is not random. Breaking is not destruction. It is direction. Think about a seed. Before it becomes a tree, before it becomes something that gives shade to others, that bears fruit that stands tall through storms, it has to be buried. It has to be pushed into darkness. The earth has to press down on it from every side. And for a while, from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. It looks like the seed is lost. It looks like the end. But underneath, in that darkness, in that pressure, the seed is breaking open. Not because it is weak, but because that is the only way it grows. You are that seed. The hardest things that happened to me did not happen to destroy me. They happened to dismantle the version of me that was too small for my destiny. I had to lose who I thought I was before I could find who I was always meant to become. The breaking was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of the real one. And maybe you are in the middle of yours right now. Maybe you are in that chapter that makes no sense yet. The one where everything feels unclear. Where the plot has fallen apart. Where you cannot see how any of this leads anywhere beautiful. I want you to hear me when I say this. The chapters that hurt the most are always the ones that matter the most. They are the chapters that change everything. You do not get strong in comfort. You get strong in the fire. People say scars are ugly. I say scars are evidence. Evidence that something tried to stop you and failed. Evidence that you were wounded and still you showed up. Still you braved. Still you kept going, even when keeping going felt impossible. Even when every single reason to continue seemed to have disappeared. Your scars are not your shame. They are your proof. They are your most honest biography. I have met people who were broken by divorce, by illness, by poverty, by betrayal. People who had every reason to lie down and give up. And yet, they rose. Not because they were special, not because they had some secret others did not have. They rose because at some point, in the middle of their pain, they made a decision. A quiet, fierce, stubborn decision. They decided that what happened to them would not be the last word about them. That decision, that single invisible turning point, changed everything. And you have access to that same decision right now. Today, in whatever room, in whatever mess, in whatever chapter you are standing in, I want to speak to the woman who is exhausted from pretending she is fine. I want to speak to the man who keeps it all together on the outside because he believes he cannot afford to fall apart. I want to speak to the person who has been strong for so long that they have forgotten. It is also allowed to feel. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to be lost. You are allowed to sit with your pain without immediately trying to fix it or explain it or justify it. But do not stay there. Feel it fully and then let it fuel you. Let the grief become grit. Let the wound become wisdom. Let the place where you broke open become the place where the light finally gets in there. Because that is the kindness in the breaking. It opens you. Before the breaking, we are often closed to new paths, closed to deeper versions of ourselves, close to the possibility that life could be different, that we could be more, that there is a purpose larger than the plan we made. The breaking forces the opening. It is violent. It is painful. But it is also, in ways you will only understand later, from the other side, it is the most merciful thing that ever happened to you. I did not understand this when I was in it. I understand it now. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but one day you will look back at the moment you thought ended you, and you will realize it was the moment that truly began you. So if you are broken right now, do not be ashamed. Do not be afraid. A kindest hands break the most beautiful things into bloom. And you, my friend, are still becoming. I want you to think about something for a moment. Think about a piece of gold. Real gold. The kind that sits in a ring on someone's finger and catches the light and makes people say, "Oh, that's beautiful." Now think about what had to happen to that gold before it became beautiful. It was buried deep in the earth, in the dark, under enormous weight for thousands of years, and then it was pulled out, and it was rough and dull and unrecognizable, and then it was put into fire, extreme, relentless, scorching fire. And only then, only after all of that, did it become the thing that makes people stop and stare. I want you to remember that image today, because you are the gold. And everything that has broken you, every fire, every darkness, every unbearable pressure, was not the end of your story. It was the making of it. We live in a world that celebrates the after. We love the comeback story. We love the highlight reel, the moment someone stands on a stage or holds their book or walks across that finish line with tears in their eyes and the crowd on their feet. We love the triumph, but we skip the in-between. We skip the part where they sat alone at midnight and could not breathe. We skip the part where they almost quit, where they did not just think about quitting, they planned it. We skip the part where they had nothing left to give and gave it anyway. And because we skipped that part, we have started to believe that broken people are failed people. That if your life has fallen apart, something went wrong, that struggle is a sign of weakness. And I am here today to tell you that is one of the greatest lies ever told. Some of the most extraordinary human beings who have ever walked this earth were also the most broken. Not broken and then healed and then extraordinary. Broken and extraordinary at the same time. The breaking was not separate from the greatness. The breaking was the pathway to it. Because when everything familiar falls away, when every comfort is removed, when the version of yourself you were holding on to dissolves, you are finally forced to discover what is underneath. And what is underneath is always stronger than what was on the surface. You do not find your real self in the easy seasons. You find yourself in the wreckage. I have watched people lose jobs, lose more. Ishes lose health, lose children, lose things that no human being should ever have to lose. And I have watched those same people, months or years later, become something they never would have become if the loss had not happened. Not because the loss was good, it was not good. Pain is not good. Grief is not good. I will never stand here and romanticize suffering. But I will tell you this, suffering, when you do not let it destroy you, when you refuse to let it be the final word, has a way of refining you down to your most essential, most powerful, most undeniable self. The broken ones bloom the brightest, not in spite of what they went through, because of it, because they know things that comfort never teaches. They know that the night does end. They know that the body can carry more than the mind believes. They know that hope is not a feeling. It is a practice, a daily stubborn decision to keep your face turned toward the light, even when you cannot see it. They know empathy in a way that people who have never suffered simply cannot access, and that depth, that knowledge, that hard-won wisdom, it pours out of them into the world and it changes things. They change things. You change things. I want to talk to you about the moment just before the bloom, because nobody talks about that moment, and it is the most important one. The moment just before the bloom is the ugliest, most hopeless-looking moment in the entire journey. The seed has cracked open, but nothing has surfaced yet. The caterpillar has dissolved inside the cocoon. It is neither what it was nor what it will become. It is in between. And in between is the hardest place to be. In between feels like failure. In between feels like nothing is working. In between makes you want to give up because you cannot see progress, cannot feel it, cannot prove it to anyone, not even yourself. And that is exactly where so many people stop right before, right at the threshold of their own transformation. Not because they are weak, but because they are human, and being human means that we need to see evidence to believe. We need proof to continue. We need someone to look us in the eyes and say, I know it looks like nothing is happening. I know it feels like you are going backwards. But you are not. You are becoming. So let me be that person for you today. You are not going backwards. You are becoming. The darkest moment of the night is always the one right before the sky starts to change. There is something that happens inside a person who has been truly broken and has chosen, despite everything, to keep going. Something shifts in them at a cellular level. They stop fearing the hard things, not because the hard things stop hurting. They still hurt, but because they have proven to themselves, through their own survival, that they can outlast the pain, that the pain is not permanent, that they are. And once you know that about yourself, once you have held yourself together through something that should have undone you, you carry a kind of quiet, unshakable confidence that no external success can ever give you. It was earned in the dark, and it belongs to you forever. I think about the people in this room. I think about the stories sitting behind your eyes right now. the stories you have not told anyone, the weight you carry so carefully that most people do not even notice you are carrying it. I think about the versions of yourself you have had to grieve, the person you thought you would be by now, the life you thought you would be living, the relationship you thought would last, the dream you had to let go of before you were ready. I see you, not the version you present to the world, the version that sits quietly with all of it in the small hours of the morning. I see that person, and I want that person to know your breaking is not your ending, not even close. The world needs broken people who kept going. The world needs your story, not the polished version, not the version where everything worked out neatly and the lesson was obvious and the growth was linear. The world needs the real version, the messy version, the version where you fell apart and put yourself back together and fell apart again and kept going anyway. Because that version, that honest, imperfect, still standing version of you gives other people permission to still be standing too. Your survival is someone else's roadmap. Your resilience is someone else's lifeline. You are carrying more than your own story. You are carrying proof for every person who has not yet found their way through, that the way through exists. The broken ones do not just survive. They become the light that guides others home. So wear your cracks without shame. Not because pain is something to perform or to be proud of for its own sake, but because your cracks are where your authenticity lives. They are where your compassion was born. They are where your understanding of other human beings, real, bone-deep understanding, took root. The world is full of polished surfaces and practiced answers and people performing versions of themselves that have been carefully curated to impress. And then there are the broken ones, the ones who have been through enough to drop the performance, to stop pretending, to simply be real. And real in a world full of performance is the most powerful thing you can possibly be. You are more beautiful for having broken. You are more capable for having suffered. You are more alive for having survived. And every single piece of you, the parts that hurt, the parts that healed, the parts that are still healing, every single piece is exactly where it needs to be. You are not behind. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too far gone, too late, too damaged, too anything. You are in the middle of your becoming. And the ones who bloom the brightest always look the most unlikely in the middle. There is a question I want you to sit with before I say another word. Not answer, just sit with. When was the last time something hurt you so deeply, so completely, that you genuinely could not see a way forward? When was the last time the pain was so total that it did not just live in your chest? It lived in your breath, in your sleep, in the way you moved through a room, in the way you looked at your own face in the mirror and did not quite recognize the person looking back. I want you to go back to that moment, not to relive it, not to reopen it carelessly, but because that moment, that precise, unbearable, impossible moment, is the most important place I want us to start today. Because that moment was not just pain. That moment was the universe trying to redirect you toward something your comfort would never have allowed you to find. We have been taught to treat pain as the enemy. From the time we are children, we are taught to avoid it, to medicate it, to distract ourselves from it as quickly as possible. We are taught that happiness is the goal and pain is the obstacle, that a good life is a life with as little suffering as possible. And so when pain arrives, as it always does, we panic. We treat it like an intruder. We fight it. We run from it. We bury it under work and noise and the thousand small ways human beings have invented to not feel what they are feeling. And in doing all of that, in running so hard from the pain, we miss the most important thing the pain came to give us. Pain is not the opposite of purpose. For so many of the most purposeful lives ever lived, pain was the very beginning of purpose. It was the thing that he cracked open the ordinary life and revealed something extraordinary underneath. Not because suffering is noble or because struggle should be romanticized, but because pain, when you stop running from it and start listening to it, carries information. Precise, personal, irreplaceable information about who you are, what you value, what you can no longer pretend not to care about, and what you are put on this earth to do. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is your most honest teacher, and the lesson it is teaching you, though it does not feel like it in the middle of the teaching, is always about your becoming. The wound is not where you are weakest. The wound is where your purpose entered. I have watched this truth play out in life after life, story after story. The woman who lost her child to illness and went on to build an organization that saved thousands of children. The man who survived addiction and became the voice that pulled others back from the edge. The person who was told they were worthless, disposable, invisible, and turned that into a life dedicated to making sure no one in their presence ever felt that way again. In every one of those stories, the pain did not just precede the purpose, it shaped it. It gave it its specific direction, its specific urgency, its specific power. You cannot manufacture that kind of purpose in a comfortable life. You cannot think your way to it in a seminar. It is carved out of real experience, out of real loss, out of real bone-deep pain that you survived and refused to waste. And I want to be clear about something important. I am not telling you that your pain happened for a reason in some neat, pre-packaged cosmic sense. I am not standing here promising you that if you just believe hard enough, everything painful will reveal itself as secretly wonderful. Life is not that simple, and you deserve more honesty than that. Why? What I am telling you is something different. I am telling you that you have a choice, not about whether the pain happened, because it did, but about what you do with it now. You can let it be something that was done to you, or you can let it be something that is working through you. Those are two entirely different lives, and only one of them leads anywhere worth going. There is a particular kind of courage that nobody celebrates loudly enough. It is not the courage of the battlefield or the boardroom. It is the courage of the person who carries their wound without letting it poison their love. The courage of the person who was betrayed and chose, after the grief had moved through them, to trust again. The courage of the person who failed publicly, humiliatingly, completely, and came back not with a performance of confidence, not pretending the failure did not happen, but quietly, honestly, one step at a time, came back. That courage, that private, daily, unglamorous courage, is the rarest kind, and it is what transforms pain into purpose, wound into wisdom, and a broken story into one that changes lives. I want to talk about what happens to your empathy when you have truly suffered, because this is one of the gifts of pain that almost nobody mentions, and it is one of the most powerful. Before you have been through something genuinely hard, your compassion for other people's pain is intellectual. You understand it conceptually. You can read about it, nod along, say the right things. But when you have been through your own darkness, when you have sat on your own floor at your own lowest point, something changes permanently in how you receive other people's pain. You do not just understand it anymore. You feel it. You recognize it. You see it in people's eyes before they have said a single word. And that recognition, that instant, wordless understanding, it is the most connecting force that exists between human beings. It makes you a safe place for people who have nowhere else to go. And a person who is a safe place for other people's pain is one of the most valuable things the world has. Suffering teaches you the language that comfortable people never learn. And the world is full of people desperate to be understood in that language. I think about the version of myself that existed before the hardest thing happened to me. She was capable. She was driven. She was in many ways doing well. But she did not know what she was made of because she had never been tested at the level that reveals character. She had opinions about strength, but no proof of it. She had ideas about resilience, but no experience of it. She understood pain the way someone understands a country they have never visited. From the outside, with guesses and assumptions and the comfortable distance of someone who has not yet had to live there. And then I had to live there and everything changed. Not eventually, not in theory, but immediately, completely. In ways I am still discovering years later. Because pain does not just change what you know, it changes how you know. It changes the depth at which you operate. It changes what you can access in yourself when you sit down to create, to speak, to lead, to love. There is a quality to the work, to the words, to the presence of someone who has genuinely suffered and genuinely chosen to keep going. A quality that you can feel without being able to explain it. People are drawn to it without understanding why. They call it authenticity. They call it depth. They call it gravitas. What it actually is earned. It is the residue of real experience, real pain, real survival. It cannot be faked, cannot be borrowed, cannot be bought. It can only be lived through. And you have lived through yours. That means you carry something in you right now that is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable. Do not minimize it. Do not shrink from it. Do not let anyone, not the voice in your own head, not the voices around you, convince you that what you have been through makes you less. It does not make you less. It makes you literate in the deepest dialect of the human experience. It makes you capable of reaching people that polished, unbroken, untested voices simply cannot reach. It makes you a bridge between the darkest places and the possibility of light. And the world, this beautiful, broken, desperate world, needs bridges more than it has ever needed anything else. Your pain was never meant to be the end of your story. It was always meant to be the ink with which your real story was written. So do not waste it. Do not let it sit inside you, untouched and unexpressed, slowly curdling into bitterness. Take it out. Turn it into something It does not have to be a grand gesture. It does not have to be a movement or a book or a speech on a stage. Sometimes it is a single conversation. Sometimes it is showing up for one person who is where you once were and saying, without performance and without pretense, I have been there. I know how it feels, and I am proof that there is another side. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is the whole thing. The kindest places the universe breaks you are the places where your purpose lives. And every crack, every fracture, every wound that has not yet fully healed, those are not the places where you are emptied. Those are the places where everything that matters most flows out of you and into the world. You were broken in exactly the right places. And everything pouring out of those places right now, every ounce of hard-won wisdom, every fragment of real compassion, every word of hard truth, you have earned the right to speak. That is your gift, not in spite of the pain. Because of it, always because of it. Let me ask you something honest. If you woke up tomorrow and everything was gone, not some things, everything, the title, a house, the relationship, the body you trusted, the plans you had carefully built across years of your life. If all of it disappeared overnight, who would you be? Not what would you do? Not how would you cope? Who would you be? Because here is what I have learned. And I learned it the hardest way a person can learn anything, when everything is taken from you. When the noise stops and the roles fall away, and the performance you have been giving for years finally has no audience, what remains is the most terrifying and the most beautiful thing you will ever encounter. What remains is you, the real you. The one that was always there, waiting beneath everything you thought you were. I lost everything. I am not speaking in metaphors. I am not using that phrase the way people use it when they have a bad year or a hard season. I mean, I lost everything at once, without warning, without the mercy of a slow goodbye. And in that loss, in that absolute total, undeniable emptiness, I made a discovery that I could not have made any other way. I discovered that I was still there, beneath the rubble, beneath the grief, beneath the fear, and the confusion and the rage. I was still there. And that self, that stubborn, surviving, undefeated self, was more than I had ever given her credit for being. We spend our whole lives building identities, building reputations, building versions of ourselves that we believe will make us worthy of love, worthy of success, worthy of being seen. And we attach to those versions so completely, so desperately, that we begin to believe we are them. We believe we are the job title. We believe we are the relationship status. We believe we are the number on the scale, the balance in the account, the opinion of the people in the room. And then life, in one sudden, indifferent moment, removes all of it. And we are left standing in the middle of who we actually are. And it is terrifying, and it is also the beginning of everything real. Loss does not introduce you to emptiness. It introduces you to yourself. I remember lying still and staring at the ceiling and thinking, this is it. This is the floor. There is nowhere left to fall. And something strange happens when you reach the floor. something that nobody warns you about. The fighting stops. Not the living, the fighting. The desperate, exhausting performance of trying to hold everything together, trying to appear fine, trying to maintain a version of your life that had already ceased to exist. When you hit the floor, all of that stops. And in that stillness, that involuntary, grief-soaked stillness, you hear something you have not heard in years. You hear your own voice, not the voice that answers emails or makes plans or says what people want to hear. Your actual voice, the one that knows exactly who you are and exactly what you are meant to do. And for the first time, because all the noise is gone, you can finally listen. That voice told me things I had been running from for years. It told me that the life I was living before was not fully mine, that I had been wearing other people's definitions of success like a coat that never quite fit, that I had been so busy trying to become what was expected of me that I had never stopped to ask, what do I actually want? What do I actually feel? What am I actually here to give? Those questions felt dangerous before the loss. After the loss, they felt like the only questions worth asking. Because when you have nothing left to protect, nothing left to perform, nothing left to lose, you become radically, beautifully honest with yourself first, and then with the world. There is a version of you on the other side of your greatest loss that you have not yet met. And I know that sounds impossible to believe when you are in the middle of the losing. When you are in the middle of it, all you can see is what is gone. All you can feel is the absence. The silence where there used to be a voice. The space where there used to be a person. The future that was supposed to happen and now will not. And the grief of that, the grief of a future that no longer exists, is one of the most disorienting kinds of pain a human being can carry. Because you are not only mourning what was, you are mourning what you thought would be. You are mourning a version of your life that existed only in your imagination. And somehow that makes it no less real and no less painful to let go of. But here's what grief does not tell you when it has you in its grip. Grief does not tell you that on the other side of losing the future you planned, there is a future you could never have planned. A bigger one, a truer one. A future that fits the actual shape of who you are. Not the shape of who you were trying to be. I did not believe that when I was in it. I am telling you now from the other side of it, with every ounce of honesty I have. It is true. What waits for you beyond the loss is not a lesser life. It is a life you could not have accessed any other way. You do not find yourself by searching. You find yourself by losing and refusing to disappear. I want to speak about something that does not get discussed enough. The identity that is born in the aftermath of loss. Because most of us, when we lose something central to who we are, we try to rebuild the same thing. We try to find a replacement, another job with the same title, another relationship with the same shape, another relationship with the same shape, another life that looks, that you deserve more, the outside, like the one we had before. And sometimes that works. But sometimes, and I think more often than we admit, what loss is trying to tell us is that we are not supposed to rebuild what was. We are supposed to build something entirely new. Something that could only be built by a person who has been through what we have been through. Something that carries the wisdom of the wound inside its very structure. The person I became after I lost everything, she is not a recovered version of who I was before. She is someone new. She thinks differently. She loves differently. She loves differently. She creates differently. She is quieter in some ways and louder in others. She is less afraid of opinions and more afraid of wasting time. She knows what matters in a way that only people who have had everything stripped away can know. Not theoretically, not philosophically, but in their bones. And that knowledge, that bone-deep, fire-tested knowledge, is the most valuable thing I have ever owned. No version of comfort, no version of ease, no version of the life I had before could have given it to me. Only the losing could. I think about the people who lost things and let the loss define them permanently, not as survivors, but as victims. Not as people who went through something, but as people who became their something. And I understand it. I understand the pull toward that identity, because when the pain is enormous, it feels dishonest to move beyond it. It feels like a betrayal of what happened to you. Like if you heal, if you grow, if you become something good on the other side of the devastation, then you are somehow saying the devastation did not matter. But that is not true. Healing is not forgetting. Growth is not erasure. You can carry your loss with full tenderness and still walk forward. You can honor everything that broke you and still refuse to stay broken. These things are not at opposites. They live together. The most powerful thing you can do with your pain is refuse to let it be the last thing you ever feel. So if you have lost something, a person, a dream, a version of yourself you loved, I am not going to tell you it does not hurt. It does. Deeply, legitimately, without apology, it hurts. But I am going to tell you that inside that hurt, if you stay present with it instead of running from it, if you sit with it long enough and honestly enough, you will find something that has been waiting there all along. You will find a version of yourself that is more honest than the one before, more grounded, more alive to what actually matters, more free, not because you have everything, but because you have discovered that you can survive without everything. And a person who knows they can survive anything is a person who is no longer controlled by fear. And a person who is no longer controlled by fear, that person is capable of things the world has never seen. That is who you are becoming. Right now, in this loss, in this confusion, in this chapter that makes no sense yet, you are not falling apart. You are falling into yourself, and that self, that real, unpolished, fully alive self, is exactly who the world has been waiting for. We have walked a long road together today. We started with the breaking, with the fire, with the floor, with the moments that dropped us to our knees and left us wondering if we would ever find the strength to stand again. We talked about the seed buried in darkness before it becomes a tree. We talked about gold, how it cannot become beautiful without the fire. We talked about the silence that comes after everything is gone, and how inside that silence, if you are brave enough to stay with it, you find the only voice that was ever telling you the truth. We talked about loss and what it reveals. We talked about SCOD, ears and what they prove. And now I want to bring it all home. Not to a neat conclusion, because life is not neat. And this speech was never about pretending it is. But to a truth, one simple unshakable truth that I want you to carry out of this room and into every hard day that comes after. You were never meant to be unbroken. Let that land for a moment. In a world that sells you the idea of a perfect, undamaged, always composed life, in a world that shows you highlight reels and calls them reality, that shows you the bloom and hides the breaking, I am standing here telling you that the breaking was always part of the design, not as punishment, not as failure, but as the very mechanism through which human beings become extraordinary. You were never meant to arrive at the end of your life unscathed. You were meant to arrive marked by every fire you walked through, every loss you survived, every night you thought would not end but did. Those marks are not evidence of a life gone wrong. They are evidence of a life fully lived. The most beautiful lives are not the ones that avoided the storm. They are the ones that danced in it and came out knowing the rain by name. I think about every person in this room who came here today, carrying something heavy. Maybe you came with a grief you have not named to anyone yet. Maybe you came with a fear you have been outrunning for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to stand still. Maybe you came tired, bone tired, soul tired, tired from holding yourself together for everyone around you while quietly falling apart inside. I see you, not the version standing here presenting yourself to the world, the version underneath, the one that is exhausted and hopeful, and terrified and brave all at the same time. That version, that complicated, messy, fully human version, is the one I am speaking to, and that is the version I believe in completely, because here is what I know about people who are still standing after everything that tried to take them down. They are not standing because life was kind to them. They are not standing because things worked out the way they planned. They are standing because somewhere inside them, underneath the doubt, underneath the grief, underneath every reason to give up, there was something that refused. A quiet, stubborn, unannounced refusal to disappear. And that refusal is not weakness. It is the most ferocious form of courage that exists. It does not look like the courage in the movies. It does not come with a soundtrack. It comes at 2 a.m. in an empty room when you make the invisible decision to still be here tomorrow. That decision, that small, private, world-changing decision, is what heroes are actually made of. I want you to make a promise to yourself before you leave this room today. Not a grand promise, not a promise that requires a perfect plan, or a perfect moment, or a perfect version of yourself that does not yet exist. A simple one. Promise yourself that you will stop waiting to be healed before you begin. Promise yourself that you will stop waiting to be whole before you offer what you have. Promise yourself that you will stop apologizing for the cracks and start trusting that light moves through them. The world does not need your perfection. The world has plenty of that, polished and practiced and carefully curated for applause. What the world is desperate for, what it is starving for, is your realness, your honesty, your story told without the parts edited out, your presence in a room, imperfect, still healing, fully alive presence that gives everyone around you permission to stop pretending to. You have been through things that were not fair, I will not pretend otherwise, and I will not insult you by trying explain them away. Some things that happen to human beings simply are not fair, and you are allowed to hold that truth. You are allowed to grieve the unfairness of it without being told to move on faster, to look on the bright side sooner, to find the lesson before you have even finished feeling the pain. Grieve it, feel it completely. But then, when you are ready, not when someone else decides you should be, but when you are genuinely ready, choose it. Choose the becoming. Choose the next version of yourself that this pain is making possible. Choose to be the thing that the fire made, not the thing the fire tried to destroy. You are not what happened to you. You are what you decided to do with it. And that decision is still yours to make, right now, today, in this moment. Every keynote in this speech has been about one thing at its core. Whether we were talking about breaking or blooming, about scars or survival, about losing everything or finding yourself in the rubble, it was always about the same thing. It was always about the fierce, radical, non-negotiable dignity of the human spirit. The part of you that does not have a name, but that you have felt in your darkest moments, in the moments you are most certain you could not continue. You have felt it push back. That is who you are. Not the pain, not the loss, not the chapter that broke you. You are the pushback. You are the part that kept going. So take that with you. Take it into the hard conversations and the uncertain mornings and the days when the old grief comes back without warning, as grief always does. Take it into the moments of doubt and the seasons of waiting and the long middle parts of stories that have not found their ending yet. Take it and let it be enough, because it is enough. You are enough. Not when you are fixed, not when you are healed, not when you have figured it all out and have something impressive to show for it. Right now, as you are, carrying what you carry, still becoming what you are becoming. The world did not break you to bury you. It broke you to plant you. And everything that grows from this moment forward, every life you touch, every truth you speak, every morning you choose to rise, that is your garden. And it is more magnificent than anything you could have grown without the breaking.